All over the globe, humanity is facing existential threats. Existential threats are threats to the very existence and continuation of humanity. If we continue down the path that we are currently on, there are multiple different vectors that could, within this generation or the next few generations, mean the end of the human species. Now, there's essentially one choice we can make when we hear that information. The choice is, are we going to try to do something about it, or are we going to continue down the status quo path that is leading in that direction? Here at the Center for World Philosophy and Religion, we are making the first choice. We are standing up and asking the question, how must we evolve as humanity in order to respond to these global existential threats? In today's episode, we're going to be hearing from multiple voices as we take a deep dive into what it means to become the new human and the new humanity in response to existential risk. I hope you enjoy this episode. Oh, and by the way, at the end of this episode, we have a once-in-a-lifetime invitation for you, so make sure to watch till the end. See you in there.
Today, Dr. Marc Gafni is not with us because he is traveling to Europe, because in 1 week, April 20, we are starting till April 24. We have the beautiful mystery school there, and you can still join. And that is, of course, what we're going to be talking about today. And so that's why Dr. Marc Gafni is not here. And that's why we are, as a community, not only the people speaking here, not me, not Eli, but all of us here. Each and every one of us here is holding the fort and is placing our attention on this beautiful new story of value that we get to not only articulate together, but also become and embody together. And so I want to start with setting our intention. And our intention is to be in the radical joy of who we are and why we are here together. And I want to start with a ritual of activation because it's so easy to come here and just consume passively, just lying on your couch, chilling. But just spontaneously, I wanted to invite us to activate yourself, whatever that means for you right now. I'm actually standing up right now at my awesome standing desk here. So maybe you also want to stand up and maybe shake a little bit or breathe a little bit. And if standing up is too much for you right now, maybe just clap your hands a little bit. Activate yourself like, oh my God, I'm here. I'm actually here. And you can also take a couple of deep breaths. And really bring yourself into presence right now, right here. Because we're here together to hold this new story of value, this revolution, to hold it together. Each and every one of us here has literally a seat at the table of history. And that's a phrase that we use so much, but it is, as Marc reminds us every week, it's so easy to forget who we are and why we are here. And it's also sometimes not easy to articulate it. It's like this week I was at the hairdresser. I got some color, I don't know if you can see it, but of course getting ready for mystery school. And talking to the hairdresser, of course, it's always about, okay, so what do you do? And I actually moved to the north of the Netherlands. And it's a small town, kind of a countryside town. So it's like the local people here. So how do I explain who we are and what we are doing here to the local hairdresser? And I found myself being shy, holding myself back a lot, like not sharing the fullness of who we are. And that's also okay, maybe in that context. But I just noticed feeling, shame and apologetic and keeping myself small. And I'm like, how are we going to do this revolution if I feel this way? Maybe you feel this way as well. Like, how do I talk about this? How do I share this with the people that I know in my circle, or actually with everyone that I meet? And in order to do that, we need to know and live and breathe and study and become this new story of values so deeply that we can dream about it, that we wake up with it, that we go to sleep with it, and also allow ourselves to be so filled up with literally the good news. Like there is so much hope that we have here every week. But to allow ourselves to be filled with that hope, to be filled with that goodness, to be filled up from the inside with that joy that we actually have this new story of value, that we have the responsibility and the power to respond to all the suffering that is happening in the world right now. And that's a lot to hold. That's a lot to acknowledge. Like, is that who I am? Like me, little old me? And it's scary. And often I don't feel this way, obviously. Often I wake up feeling in my contracted separate self, or I wake up feeling so tired, so exhausted, because it's so hard to do what we're doing. And sometimes I want to quit. Sometimes I want to give up. Sometimes I'm, like I said, I'm tired. And that's why we come together here every week, to remind ourselves. And today I was feeling, because Marc is not here, it does also arouse us into responsibility, into stepping up, literally standing up, taking our seats at the table, claiming our power and saying, yes, this is our revolution. And you can imagine, we can pretend or imagine that we need to be speaking in front of people, whether it's here in one mountain or whether it's, we imagine speaking for 1,000 people, and you are the person that needs to be speaking this new story of value into the world. And it's your responsibility to, as we say, love the moment open in your unique corner of the world. So waking up with that knowing, with that responsibility, like you have to first every morning arouse yourself, not only in the sexual sense, but in like the sense of being excited about your life, being excited about the creativity, about the beauty, about the goodness that we're holding here together every week, because it's so easy to take it for granted. And I am so, I want to say guilty of that, guilty as charged, not in a bad way guilty, but like I take it for granted all the time, and I need to remind myself all the time, and we need to remind each other. So that's what I wanted to do today, is to remind each other, like, oh my God, this is what we're holding here. This is ours to hold. And we are not here to live that, I want to say, ordinary life or a normal life. Like I look around here in the village and beautiful people living beautiful lives. But as Marc shared once with me, the story of the master that is walking around in the streets and in the darkness with a lantern in the streets and looking from the outside, looking into the houses through the window, a house with a beautiful family, with beautiful children, living that life. And that's a beautiful life. It's beautiful to raise children, and it's beautiful to live your life in that way. But I am not meant to live my life in that way. And I have always known in every cell of my body, my soul, my bones, that I am here to live my greatness. I'm here to actually participate in something so big. And it is scary to allow that to happen. And I know that each and every one of us here has that same feeling in their heart. Whatever it means for you in your life is completely unique. You have your own unique story to live, your own unique risk that you need to be taking. But I do know, because we're here on this call, we were called, we were alert to be here on this call. And most of us come here week after week after week because we are alert, because we can feel the heartbeats beating in our chest, like, this is where we are meant to be. This is what we are meant to be doing together. And so just to feel the joy of that, to feel the goodness of that, to feel the power of that, and to feel the responsibility of that, and to feel the obligation of that, to feel the fear of that and the trembling of that. And it's like the miracle of that. It's like, is this for real? Is this for real? Like all the suffering that is happening all over the world right now. And it's ours to do something about that, that is so powerful. And as we say here every week, we live in a time between worlds. We live in a time between stories. And we are doing right now exactly what Da Vinci and his cohorts were doing in the Renaissance. And they were articulating a new story of value that then became modernity. And how they did that is only with a few people. And even that is like mind-boggling to like get into our heads like it's only a few people. There were only a few people, and those people are us. Like the people here on the call, the people watching the replay, the people involved with the center. It's only 1,000 people at the core of the Renaissance that came together week after week after week after week, shaping this new story of value, shaping this new vision for new humanity, placing our attention on this container to literally birth a new humanity. And it doesn't mean that we're going to convince everyone of this vision. We're not going to convince everyone of this exact language. Not everyone has to speak this exact language, but what we're actually doing is we are erotic mystics. We are the mystics. We are the philosophers that are envisioning the next step of evolution together and are bringing it down. We're downloading it. Of course, Dr. Marc Gafni is downloading it, bringing it into existence. And literally here every week we have a seat at the edge of evolution, like it's being shaped right in front of our eyes. And it can only be shaped because we show up here every week. Marc can't do this alone. It's because of our attention. It's because of our energy. It's because of our unique placing and unique evocation and our unique desire that we're coming together here, that we're shaping this new story of value. So I just want to thank everyone for being here every week, for showing up, for caring so much. And I want to call us into excitement and into joy and into believing in the miracle, like that we found each other is just amazing, and that we get to do this together is amazing. And really calling us to really know the Dharma so well that we can speak it into existence. And we always share here in the beginning 2 articles. One is called Who We Are and What We Are Doing Here in One Mountain, and the other one is called Love or Die. And those 2 articles, we want to know those so well. We want to be able to speak that anytime we need to speak it. And those are the core steps of who we are and what we're doing here. And if you want a deeper version of that, of course, first principles, first values, especially the first 10 chapters are like, what is a new story of value? Why do we need a new story of value? What does it mean we live in a time between worlds, in a time between stories? What does it mean that we are Da Vinci? What is a new story of value? What is value? What is evolving value? So all of that is in here. So we want to be reading this book again and again and again and again until it becomes our flesh, until it becomes our body, until it becomes our whole being, so that we can then spread the good news into the world, because that's what she needs us to do. It's not just coming here and listening, it's becoming it, studying it, embodying it, and then spreading it in your unique corner of the world in your own unique way, in a way that only you can do. And literally, if you and if we don't do what we are called to do, then this new renaissance literally is not going to happen, because she has called us here. Only 1,000 people at the center. And you are one of those 1,000 people. You have that seat. So if you have that seat and you don't show up for it and you don't do what you came here to do, then we're all literally just waiting for the thing to take off, because we're waiting for you to do that thing that you know that is yours to do, whatever it is. So thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your beautiful, precious attention. It matters so insanely much. And with that joy, I turn my word to you, Eli.
I just want to take a second to thank you, Krista, for absolutely blowing that away. Can we have people in the chat box say how amazing that was? That was absolutely gorgeous. And hearing, to just echo that back to you, Krista, hearing your voice and your way of expressing this also hits me and opens my heart, as I'm sure it has as I was watching comments come in throughout the entire intro there. So thank you. And thank you for also inspiring me to step in now and take my seat too, to do my part. Today, I'm actually going to do something that I've wanted to do for quite some time now, which is go into a specific book that I'm reading at this time, and go through some of the highlight teachings and weave it in together in a way that I think might hit people in a different way, from a different angle than we normally get to hear from Marc, because Marc is doing such a brilliant job of laying out the source code teachings. And then, as Krista was saying, it's our job to then, one, experience it in our own lives, because we all feel this resonance with the words that Dr. Marc Gafni is speaking. But feeling a resonance is a fleeting thing, right? It's there on Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it slowly fades out. Then you get back to Sunday and you get boost again. But when it's really real in your life, it's because on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you're living and you're talking with your friends, and you notice a friend is in a bad mood, and you notice it's because they're actually not at all in alignment with Eros and desire in their own life. And then you can actually help them understand why they're not feeling well at that time and change their day. And all of a sudden your day gets lit up because you see them get lit up. And then you start to understand what these teachings are really about. So that's what I'm going to speak a bit into based on this book, Codes of Desire, on the nature of reality. So there's really two things that I want to talk about, and then we're going to do a practice. So the two things that I'm going to go through is, number one, as Krista was speaking about in the beginning, right now we're experiencing global existential risk, meaning that there are multiple different vectors that are happening on planet Earth right now, such as resource depletion, such as the threat of nuclear war, such as AI without any sort of ethical guidelines, so super intelligence being made without having strict moral guidelines for what it is going to create. We have a bunch of these different vectors happening at once, which is creating a threat to either the future of humanity's survival as a species, or the threat to our humanity. So will humans become pretty much plugged into a machine as we sit there and watch content all day that's being fed to us by an AI algorithm? That's a very real possibility, and everyone can see it playing out as we walk down the street and see people just glued to a phone. I'm no different. I also struggle with that every single day. So we are facing these existential threats. So the first part I want to talk about is, how do we actually step in and do something about this? How do we save humanity? What could actually get to the root cause of this existential crisis? And then part two is going to be about how we in our own personal lives can become the person that we need to be to create the change, not only in our personal life, but in our communities around us. And yes, and then we're going to go into a practice where we're going to be able to embody that a bit. So part one of this, I want to tell a quick story, which is just how I got here. And I think everyone has probably a similar story. But when I was 14, I watched my first TED Talk on climate change. And I grew up with a mom who's an environmentalist, who's always outside planting trees. And she would walk me out into the backyard during the summer, and we'd look at the soil, and we'd see how the soil was drier than it was over the past years and years. And there was always this feeling in me like something's up with the way that our whole world is going. But I had never seen it laid out the way I did then in this TED Talk. So I'm a 14-year-old kid, and I'm watching scientists who are doing the best, most in-depth studies in their field about the biosphere. So the entire environment that gives us life, that makes our life possible. And they're talking about how the way that we're depleting resources on the planet and burning fossil fuels is actually leading to the degradation of the biosphere, which is headed towards our potential annihilation. I'm a 14-year-old sitting there, and my heart's just dropped. What? How are you supposed to respond when someone tells you, when the smartest people in their field are telling you, hey, the entire system that makes your life possible is getting destroyed by our own decision making? So that's what I'm sitting there watching as a 14-year-old, and I start to first just get really sad and be like, okay, well, and I've talked to a bunch of my friends about this too, that people who in my generation who have seen that, a bunch of us are like, should we even have kids? Should we think about even having a future? Because why would we bring a child onto this planet if suffering is the thing that we're bringing them into, which is just a horrible thing to feel? So with all of that in my heart, as a 14-year-old, I'm trying to figure out what to do with my time. And obviously in that moment too, when you feel such a big crisis, there's also a birth that happens inside of you, an image of me. I started to imagine myself as like, what could I actually do about this? Is there anything I could do about this? And that is the birth of the hero, the genuine impulse that you want to respond and change the world. Because as a 14-year-old, I could feel life is good, life is worth living. I want to be alive. I want to have kids. I want to create a family. How can we create a world where that's actually possible? So I had these ideas of like, clearly we need to make a big change, but I don't know how, and I don't know anyone who knows how. And I started to realize that at the very root of the problems that were going on was human decision making. Because all the problems that we have now are based on the decisions that humans have been making in the past, either collectively or individually. So I started to have this realization probably around the age of 18, 19, as I started to study this more deeply, that there's clearly decision making that needs to change. But how do you change someone's decision making? Like, you can try bombarding them with information, but we also know most of the time if you tell someone a bunch of these facts, they get scared and want to turn away. So how do you actually get someone to a place where they're embodied and ready to actually take action when they hear information? That's when I started to realize it's a shift of consciousness. It's a shift of our response to input coming in, and us and the way that we perceive reality changing so that we feel responsible for what's happening in the world. And with that shift of consciousness, I was also thinking the whole time, it's got to be a shift of like our collective consciousness, which is a shift of culture. And I had never had those two really explicit words put together until I started hearing the teachings at the Center for World Philosophy and Religion, when Dr. Marc Gafni says, what we need is to shift culture and consciousness. At the very core, we need to shift culture and consciousness. And then he was talking about how there's an image of a new human and a new humanity that we can become called Homo Amor. And when I first heard that, I was kind of like, what does that mean? But then I went back and started to think about the fact that for my whole life, I've been looking for this shift in consciousness and culture. I didn't have the words for it yet. But then Dr. Marc Gafni had laid out, okay, we're right now living as what we define as Homo sapien, which literally means the wise human. Sapien means wisdom. So it's humans who are making decisions. Wisdom is pretty much just making a decision that is profitable for your future. But of course, Homo sapien is all about me and my family and us building our country or our small civilization that's helping us make the right decisions that's profitable for us as an individual, as a family, or as a smaller collective. However, wisdom without love, without an attachment to a larger ability to feel something wider, is just foolish, because then you're making decisions based on some algorithmic thought pattern of, oh, if I can have more grain tomorrow, then I'll do anything today, even if it means damaging the soil for people 15 years from now. But we're not thinking about that because we're thinking from this view of just wisdom, Homo sapien, not of Amor, a greater field, a field of love, a field of understanding what's coming after me and feeling what's coming after me before it's in front of my eyes. So I was going through this whole process of being like, okay, we need to change consciousness, culture. Then I started to hear Dr. Marc Gafni speak about consciousness, culture, Homo sapien to Homo Amor. And suddenly, all of the thoughts and feelings that I had had were grounded in a clear philosophy. That is amazing, because it's literally putting words to the feelings that you and I have had our whole life of something needs to change. We need a new human. We need a new humanity, but I don't know what that is. So this idea of going from Homo sapien to Homo Amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapiens, where we don't let go of the wisdom, we don't leave the wisdom behind, we transcend and include it. So we keep the wisdom, but we add the greater field, we add the Amor, we add the love. So that was just a little intro to how important it is to hear this philosophy and how it lands in all of our personal lives. And now I just want to share a quick piece about why that's so important, which is on page 109 of this book. So, as Dr. Marc Gafni often teaches, and these books are oral essay books, this particular line of books at the top, you can see oral essay, one man, many paths oral essay, which means it's words that Mark has spoken during these calls, all laid out in a really fun, easy format to read and digest. So it's a super good book to read. We have over 37 of these oral essay books that you can check out, and there's more than 50 publications now out there from the great library. So the oral essays are a great way to dive in. But we've many of us have heard this teaching before, but I just want to read it with this perspective now. So, existential risk is global. Climate change, artificial intelligence, the gap between the haves and have nots. Global challenges require global solutions. Global solutions require global coordination. Global coordination requires global resonance or global coherence. We need global coherence in order to resonate with each other in order to coordinate. Global coherence requires global intimacy. And global intimacy, like intimacy in any relationship, requires a shared story of value. But right now, there's no shared story of value. There's a degraded fundamentalist value, and there's a desiccated, disqualified value of postmodernism. Only a shared story of value can respond to existential risk, which is the death of humanity or the death of our humanity. So, this word shared story of value is another one like Homo sapiens to Homo Amor, where when I first heard it, shared story of value, I was like, what does that actually mean? But then I started to think more about the fact that if we want to actually collaborate and come together as a globe, which we need to do in order to respond to these global existential risks that we are facing, we need some shared understanding of what reality is, what right and wrong is, what good action and bad action is, so that we can start to cohere and collaborate based on a shared set of goals. But a shared set of goals, of course, cannot be driven from a place of me and my people. It needs to be driven from a place of we and our people, meaning collective global humanity. So, collective global humanity, it's just like to think on this level. And if you're someone on this call, as Krista was saying, you're someone who's able to think on this level, meaning that you're actually able to hold an entire globe. And this was reminding me of the situation that we're seeing unfold right now in Iran, where the Strait of Hormuz, which is where oil is going through, that's supplying so much of the world with energy, with meaning heat, hot water, oil to drive your cars. And that is closed right now due to international conflicts that are happening. I don't want to talk about the conflicts at all because I'm not an expert in that. But what you are seeing happen is that different places all around the globe, Myanmar is one example, are now calling a state of emergency, a state of energy, an energetic state of emergency, meaning that they do not have enough oil to continue living the way that their entire society is built on living. So this entire civilization or this entire group of human beings is being so badly affected by this one conflict that's happening that in Myanmar, for example, they're doing a oil saving action right now where people with odd numbers at the end of their license plate are able to drive on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and people with even numbers on their license plate are able to drive on the other days. That's how real this crisis is. That's how real these crises are right now. And we need global solutions if we're going to be able to come together. So just it's real and it's unfolding right now, and all the examples are here. But of course, when I start to think about that, and I'm like, okay, so we need this shared story of value. We need to be able to cohere around a certain understanding of reality. But then I start to think, if there's 8.6, however many billion humans on planet Earth, how are we all supposed to ground in any sort of shared understanding of reality? Because our lives are so different all over the globe. And reading in this book gave me one of the keys that I hadn't quite understood yet. So I'm going to go over to page 120, where this is wild. So this is how deep this philosophy goes, right? Because if we're not getting this right from the core up, then we're not actually standing on stable ground, which is what postmodernity is doing right now. Postmodernity, a lot of people who are more in like a scientific background, like I would consider myself coming from a postmodernist background where I had grown up with scientists as parents and I was looking at the world very objectively. And through that lens, when you start to think about reality, you're looking at it in numbers and you're thinking about, okay, well, if we have this many humans using this many resources, that's not going to work out. What are we going to do? Boom, boom. And you're thinking almost like mathematically rather than thinking about the value of a human life and why human life matters and how we can, which opens up an entirely new way of taking action. But what I was realizing is that when you are in that state of this like postmodern scientific mind, you are not actually grounded in your body. You're thinking very out of body. You're thinking very just purely rationally. But what I love about this teaching is what I'll say right here. So the shared story of reality is the story of reality's sensuality. So this is how do we even ground a new story of value? What is a new story of value based on? The shared story of value is the structure of reality. The shared story of value is the sensuality of reality in narrative form. The shared story of reality is the story of reality's sense, the sense making of reality, or the story of reality's sensuality. This is wild. I'll talk in 1 second, but this is so wild if you can feel this. You can't split sense making from sensuality. Reality is a story, and we live inside of that story. That story is both sensible and sensual. At its core, it's a story of desire. A shared story of value is a shared story of desire. My code of value is my code of desire. We are used to thinking of sacred texts as codes of value, but underneath sacred texts, at their best, at their core, are codes of desire. So I'm going to take this in just a couple pieces. First, the shared story of value is the structure of reality. So when we're talking about how do we find a shared story of value, a shared understanding on the globe, what we're trying to define is what reality actually is. This is the deepest, most profound study of science, of philosophy, of psychology. All of these fields at their depth are really trying to describe what is reality. And that is where we are grounding this shared story of value. And the most important thing is that you cannot split this creation of this shared story of value from your sensuality, your literal ability to sense reality, which when we're living in a world that's becoming more and more technologically driven, where we're looking through a screen to understand what reality is, we're actually getting further and further away from a shared sense of reality because everyone has their own individualized algorithm feeding them content rather than us putting down our phone, looking at each other face to face and being like, what is reality? What is good? What is right and wrong here? Instead, we're all in separated screens. And that's why Dr. Marc Gafni, Dr. Zach Stein, so many people at the center talk about techno-feudalism, which is this idea that an algorithm can actually completely structure the way that society moves, rather than us having a shared field of sense making, which is what we need to actually tap into if we want to make any sort of shared sense around the world. So that's how amazing the shared story of value is at its core, is that it's grounded in our sensuality. But then I think this is the craziest thing, is to say that we're used to thinking of sacred texts as codes of value. So the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita or any of these texts that are here to guide us philosophically, morally, we're used to thinking about them as guiding your value in life, your values. But underneath sacred texts, at their best, at their very core, are codes of desire. This is so wild because at the very core of the most clarified sacred text that we have is actually the desire that we have to create the most beautiful, good, true, gorgeous world that we can create. So, a sacred text are people who are diving so deeply into the sensuality of reality. They're falling so deeply in love with life, meaning that they're paying such close attention to what life actually is, that they are able to then articulate these words that resonate as true within all of us because we can sense that same desire that they are writing in sacred words. That's insane. That's insane to understand that at the core of these sacred texts are these desires, these clarified desires about where reality is meant to go, which is what reality actually is and what reality is disclosing to us. Yeah. So I actually have more to say, but I'm gonna do one tiny last thing. So I promise you I will read one tiny more section and then we will move on. But what this really does is it gets you to the core that reality and these sacred texts of reality are describing desire. Reality itself is desire, is desire for ever more value. The thing that drives us as humans when we are living our lives, we're thinking about how do I get to a better life? Right? That's how we're thinking in our personal lives. And then when we can expand our perception, we can start thinking about how do we get to a better life. That means that we are sensing what is valuable, what is worth fighting for, what is worth living for, what is worth dying for. And that's where we get to the core teaching of cosmoerotic humanism, which is that the experience of value lives within the experience of eros. Eros is another way of saying desire. Eros means contact, deep contact between us. I'm kissing my beloved's shoulder. We're holding hands. Just that simple moment of contact, because Eros and sensuality is not some sort of car carcituated penetration of a particular kind. It's a contact of the heart, contact of the body, contact of the mind. Desire means I desire to make contact. When I make contact, let's when I make contact, let's take the sensual image of the Song of Solomon. It's the moment which I've crossed the line. I am on the inside. I don't ask, is value real? I don't have to make anyone realize value is real. I realize directly in my body in this moment. I don't stop and say, what is the value of the world? I don't stop and say, what is the meaning of life? Eros is value, and value is filled with Eros. There is no split between them, they are one. So, to tie this all together, our desire, our Eros, is experienced through our sensuality, which is our process of sense making in reality. And as we experience Eros in reality, we experience the value of reality, what life is all about. And as we experience those, we start to be able to tap in to the story of value, a new story of value which can cohere us globally in a time of existential risk. So that was literally 3 paragraphs out of this book. If you want to dive as deeply as possible into the wisdom that we are laying down here and that Dr. Marc Gafni and the whole team is working on, there are so many of these books. Literally get any of them and start reading. We have a book club where we're reading these types of texts. Yes. So now I'm going to pass my word further on to Joni, who's going to come on and guide us in a practice as we are going to feel this inside of our own lives.
Hello. Oh, Eli, just feeling so lit up inside. Thank you. I'd like to invite you to take a moment now and just close your eyes. Just close your eyes. And as you close your eyes now, becoming more and more comfortable in the space around you. More and more comfortable with the surface beneath you. And with each breath you take, simply relax, sink deeper. And now, I'd like you to bring your attention to the version of you that you are now. You may see this version of you in your mind's eye. You may feel this version of you, or you may simply know and sense that version of you is there now. Trusting the mind, trusting the body. And as you bring that to mind the version of you that comes with all your past experiences, all your trials and tribulations, all of your past obstacles, pitfalls, perhaps all of your past relationships. And bring to mind now any of the stories that you carry. Stories that have held you back from that version of you that you're meant to be. Perhaps these are stories of your limitations, the stories that maybe someone else have told you at some point in your past, stories that you've picked up along the way. You may also call these beliefs. Perhaps these are stories of, I'm not good enough. If only I could do more. If only I were better, or only if only I was as good. Perhaps you have stories about love. Your ability to love, your ability to receive love, the reasons why you can, the reasons why you cannot, all the things that have been in the way. Just allowing those to come to the surface now. And just begin to notice the armor that surrounds you. Now, this armor may be very thin, or perhaps it is quite thick. You may even bring to mind memories of the past where the armor was really thick. It may be fortified, or perhaps it's easily penetrable. But yet in some way, shape, or form, the armor exists. And as you see, sense, or feel your separate self in this moment, noticing any beliefs you may carry around your ability to be, do, or even have something in your life. To serve humanity in a greater way. To serve your family, your community, and any limitations that are in the way. Connect now to the emotions, the feelings, the sensations that exist around your separate self. That version of you that thinks they're separate from the all, who maybe even sees others as different. And just connect now into those feelings. Good. Now, in front of you is a glass door. And on the other side of that door lives a very different version of you. This version of you has no armor. This version of you loves themselves and every being on this planet unconditionally, with mad love, as we say, with outrageous love. Feel that love for yourself that is not based on or contingent upon you being or doing or having anything, just simply because. See that version of yourself without any limitations now. Serving your family, your community, and the world at large in the greatest way possible. Feeling those feelings arise in you, feeling the version of your unique self now, with no limitations, no self-doubt, with pure certainty, with pure love, with pure Eros pulsing through your body, through your veins, through every cell in your body now. And on the count of 3, you're going to double the intensity of this feeling. 1, 2, 3, double it now. And double it again. Welcome to what it feels like to be Homo, Amor. And now, I invite you to step in to the inside of Mystery School, to cross over from Homo sapien to Homo Amor.
The feeling of Mystery School is that feeling of terror and joy when I take responsibility for the whole thing. I'm entering into the source code of consciousness and culture itself. And we're not engaging in the beautiful sacred play of personal transformation, but we realize that actually the game we're playing in the sense of the infinite game is that our transformation is the transformation of the whole. To the extent that there's a break and a rend and a tear in my intimacy, in my unique quality of intimacy, then the divine becomes dissociated and non-intimate. And then I'm not only a part, but I participate in. And that actually I can access truth, as Op said, right, the word we use, anthro-ontologically. And I can actually articulate it in a set of first principles and first values. Unless you get values real, unless you can show values real, you can't create a shared story. Can't be done. We can't align on anything. We can't have any global coordination unless we can create a shared story of value. And to create a shared story of value, you need to do 2 things. 1, show that story's real. 2, show that value's real. If you just declare those to be true, you're fucked. So we have to actually show, one, the realness of story. Story is real, and there is a shared story that lies underneath all of the contrived stories. So we need to explode contrived stories, we need to explode dominator stories, and then begin to realize that actually that which unites us is still far greater than that which divides us. There's an ultimate, deeper story, and the only thing that changes culture, be able to access that story. There are many stories that are lies. Tell me lies, tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. But one of the sweet little lies is that story is just made up. And how do you know that's true? Eavesdrop on your own heart. So the classical true self anti-story meditation masters tell us, fuck man, all you're thinking about is yourself. Get out of that monkey mind and sit. Fuck that desire thing, right? And like get out of your story, move beyond your story. And there you are thinking about your story. So I'm gonna tell you a little secret about everyone in the room. Most people in this room, 99% of the people in this room, for 99% of the time, are thinking about themselves. All the time, my story. Is that because we happen to gather the most selfish, egomaniacal, pathological, narcissistic, psychotic group that could be gathered any place in the world has come together at this castle to be together in this great time, in this great explosion of psychosis? No, that is not why. Right? You know why? The reason we're thinking about our stories is because we're eavesdropping on God thinking about our stories. I want you to get the difference. Just get that. I'm thinking about my story because the infinite intimate is personally addressing me and thinking about my story in a unique vector of intimate thought all the time. And so when I get really deep into my deepest heart's desire, I'm thinking about my story, I'm actually overhearing the currency of the infinite intimate thinking and feeling me. It's a different world. Do you get that? So yes, move beyond the victim story. Yes, move beyond the ego story. Do you know why we fight for our survival, my friends? Why does a human being not just turn over and fucking die when it's hard? We're fighting for our survival. Not because we're, right, egomaniacal beings with some weird... No, we fight for our survival because we realize our survival is just this clever word that the thinner levels of evolutionary psychology has some thicker levels, but the thinner levels, right, use the word survival as a kind of disguise for a deeper word, which is called life. Life. Wanting to survive means I want to live. And I know that life is a value, but I don't just know that life is a value. You get this? I don't just know that life is a value. What do I know? In the depth of my being, I know my life is a value. My personal, intimate life with all of its holy and broken hallelujahs. And even if it all goes wrong, I stand before the Lord of Song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah. And hallelujah means it matters infinitely. I'm personally addressed, right? And oh my God, that changes the source code of reality. That's mystery school. That's mystery school. Right? It's our capacity, our willingness to be, as Aubrey said so beautifully. Right? So when he said ceremonies, my heart just blew open.
Now, if Marc would have told me that this mystery school was going to feel like a week of ayahuasca ceremonies, I'd have been like, bro, relax. Relax. It's not going to be that. And then I get here, and somewhat still inexplicable to me, this is a ceremonial container. We are in ceremony. I thought we were here to do something that was more familiar in another vector, but actually we're doing something that's very familiar in a separate vector. We're actually doing a medicine journey together.
I've never framed mystery school in that particular way. It's a beautiful way to hold it. We're in ceremony. And the ceremony is, we're taking responsibility for the whole thing. With mad humility, tenderly, gently, like they did in Florence, in a time between worlds and a time between stories. And how many people felt that this morning, yesterday morning, right? Things literally reconfigured and restructured and reorganized, and we articulated. That's what they were doing, right, in Florence. They were literally, they weren't entertaining each other. They weren't doing kind of a personal development seminar. They're saying, fuck, the whole world is burning and falling apart, and yet so filled with potential joy and possibility of possibility, and we're at this time between worlds and this time between stories. We're going to take responsibility for the whole thing. We're going to draw our swords. We're going to be knights. And that's why I said to Paul, we're going to be heroes, not the old problematized hero, but heroes who can feel the whole. One for all and all for one. I lend you my sword, world. That's not a simple position. And if that doesn't make you a little nauseous, you're crazy. Right? But it's also ecstatic. It's mystery school. It's an entirely different vector, right? And as I said in the beginning, mystery school is not a public performance, right? In order to kind of do seminars like the Landmark Forum was, we decided not to do that. Mystery school is Florence. It's a living laboratory which says we can only evolve the source code of consciousness and culture if we enter the source code and we work out the most impossible understandings.
Wow. If you can feel what I feel in this moment now, you have been teleported into time, back into time. Every cell in my body is lit up. It is on fire. It is screaming. It is yearning. We are in a time between worlds. We are in a time between stories, as Marc said, so eloquently and so profoundly. And this moment in time right now needs you. It needs you to become the hero that the world needs. It doesn't need someone else. It needs you in all of our messiness, in all of our glory. And on the behalf of the Center for World Philosophy and Religion, I am so honored and I am so thrilled to invite you to step into the inside of the inside, to cross over with us from what it means to be Homo sapien, Homo armor. That didn't feel good, did it? That's not where we want to stay. That's not where we can stay. We must make the crossover from Homo armor, Homo sapien, to Homo Amor. And we can only do that with you. And today I feel so honored to be able to bring Mystery School from live in Holland, Castle de Burke, to your living room today, so that you can step into what it feels to be like the Florentine Platonic Academy, and to step into that new human and to help us create the new humanity that is needed right now. There's a link that's dropping in the chat right now. It is an absolutely incredible opportunity for you to be there with us. Maybe you couldn't be there in person. Maybe your life circumstances dictated that it just wasn't time right now. Money, timing, all the things. And we still want to give you an opportunity to be with us. And so this morning, we actually made it even more affordable for you, because we want every single one of you in this community to be there with us. The next best thing to being live in person is to be there with us in the energetic field that we all hold, and we will all hold together as we co-author and we rewrite a new story of value for humanity. So click the link below, join us. It's $397 to be a part of this amazing, incredible, epic 5-week journey of the crossing. And if you are already a member of the community, you actually get $100 off of this invitation. And so it's $297 for you. Or maybe you'd like to become a member of the community now, and you would get to do that. There's probably also a link for that where you can, or someone can drop it in, join as a member of the Who We Must Become community and receive Mystery School for $297, and to really play your part and your role to continue this mission, this movement, this revolution. Just go ahead and click the link below and sign up. There's no time to wait. We all know what happens when we wait. The world doesn't change. So click the link in the chat and join us from the comfort of your living room at the crossing. Thank you so much. I turn my word to you, my beloved Kristen.
So beautiful, Joni. Thank you for that beautiful meditation, visualization, making it so real, how it feels in our body. To imagine what we can be, what this new human feels like and tastes like. And thank you, Eli, for that beautiful, powerful, on fire teaching talk that you did based on this beautiful book from Dr. Marc Gafni, Codes of Desire. I want to add to this invitation to come together that we come together for our own personal transformation, but we even more probably come together for the transformation of the whole. So even if you feel like, I don't feel armored, I'm living my best life here, there's always armor to shed, and there is a beautiful process to do that at the Mystery School, but we're really coming together for the sake of the whole. And so to place our attention on this new story of value and to place our attention on the healing of the world, showing up, as Mark said, as knights in shiny armors, to take our seat at the table and to make this future of humanity even a possibility. So to become these evolutionary heroes and to access that in our bodies, and that's why we're coming together. It's not only self-help. It is also, it will transform our personal lives, but it's so much bigger than that. And it's so beautiful that we can join from wherever we are in the world. As Joni said, it's like on your living room, you will get the recordings. You can change your time zones to match Europe and join us live, of course, or you can watch the recordings at your own time. And many people have said that the online experience, of course, it's not exactly the same, but you can actually feel the transmission. As we have these weekly mystery schools here in One Mountain Many Clouds, we can feel Dr. Marc Gafni speaking it, and we can feel the transmission of the Dharma. And so even if you're joining online, it is going to be a very, very powerful, life-changing experience. And in a way, it is also setting us off into the year, because we are taking the next step as a community, who we must become, to really deepen our practice as a community and deepen our relationships and deepen our intimacies, because those 1,000 people at the core of the Renaissance that we spoke about in the beginning, that's us. And it's only going to happen if we are practicing what we're preaching, literally, if we are in resonance with each other, if we are in intimacy with each other. And so we're doing that in the community. It's the online community where we're going to create, well, we created already, but we're going to launch it after Mystery School. There's going to be a beautiful integration program in the community where we're revisiting all the teachings, where we're going to be adding practices like, what do you actually do on a daily basis to become Homo more? Because it doesn't happen overnight. So we have community platform, we have discussion groups, we have book clubs. All of that is happening in the community. And so joining Mystery School online is really kickstarting that community and kickstarting all of us to be so dripping in the Dharma, and then take it into the next year together, where we're living and practicing and breathing it all throughout the year. So it's going to be a Mystery School year round. So now let's close.